Deadlock feels completely different after this patch. The old patch was basically one big earn fight, but now there's way more plays to actually play the game. You can split push, jungle more efficiently, fight rift, or just out macro people entirely. So in this video we're gonna break it all down, and how to actually play this patch the right way. What's up friends, this is Metro, and this is my new updated in-depth macro guide on the new Deadlock meta. We're gonna talk about the Rift, we're gonna talk about the new Urn, how it's actually pretty bad or misused by most players, how jungle is way stronger than it used to be, and how you can use all of that to win more Deadlock games. This is the most complex patch we ever had. I think this is the most complicated the game has ever been, but as long as you macro correctly, you can use this to your advantage and win way more games. The impact you can have as a single player right now is way higher. Doesn't matter if you play carry, support or tank, you will do a lot more if you use these tips. And we'll start with the new Rift. The new Rift kind of functions like the old King of the Hill fights, but not really. There's a way to predict when these rifts spawn even before you get the warning timer. So if you're looking at the side lanes, you can see the glow of the spawning rift before you even get a warning or anyone else on the team gets a warning. Which means if you're around the lane before, you can use this info up to a minute before the enemy team to guide your team to start the new Rift fight and be there early. This is absolutely essential because unlike the old Urn, the new Rift will just activate no matter if anyone is around. So if you're around and the enemy is not around, you just get a free Rift fight and you get a massive bonus boost to your gold. There is a random timer to the Rift. It spawns every 6 to 8 minutes, starting from minute 11. So it can spawn from minute 11 to minute 13, and then after it goes to random again and it spawns 6 to 8 minutes after. This is intentional by the devs because they don't want you to be able to predict the fight. If everyone would know that the Rift spawns at the exact time, it would devolve into a big team fight again. So scouting ahead and knowing that it spawns is very important. You don't even have to be on the side lane itself to know the Rift is spawning. You can hear this from very far away, so take a listen. Even if you're closer to mid than the Rift spawn, you can still kind of hear it if you pay it close attention. So it's gonna also be pretty easy for you if you pay attention to know where it spawns, when it spawns, and get your team ready. So why does this matter and how does this play into the overall game? The Rift is now the most valuable objective to fly around. It gives money compared to the old Urn, so it is just the most money on the map. So securing the Rift is still gonna be your #1 priority. But joining the Rift fight is not always gonna be the best choice. Jungle also got a lot stronger because they removed bounties from a lot of kills. So getting kills in the game right now, if you're in fights, will net you less money, which in return means jungle is better again, okay? So the priority for you farming should still be lane creeps first and then jungle second. So let's say you're a carry and you're sitting on the side lane and the Rift is about to spawn on the other side of the map. It is now 100% viable to not join the Rift fight and split push or farm jungle instead if the situation allows for it. I had one crazy game where I've played where the enemy team completely ignored the Rift and instead decided to split push 2 walkers at once. And after the Rift got resolved and we won the Rift, the enemy team actually got ahead in money, okay? So split pushing is better, jungle is better, and now we get to the new Urn. This now, the new Urn now works very differently to how it used to be. You can still pick it up as one player and you still get the sprint speed while you're carrying the Urn. You can now even use any of your movement abilities to get across the map while holding it. But you can no longer drop the Urn manually. The only way the Urn is going to resolve is if you deposited it at the end point or an enemy punches it off you. That being said, the Urn itself now gives way less money and it actually only gives money to you as a player. Which means it's viable to pick up on basically any character and you want to think of it like a little side quest you can do when there's really nothing else to do or when there's chaos on the other side of the map and you can guarantee a free Urn drop off. The money that you get scales over time, so at the start of the game, it's going to be roughly 950 souls for the first Urn, but the longer the game goes, the more money the Urn will give you. Keep in mind that all the comeback mechanics are affected by this, which means if you as a team are behind a bit and you pick up the Urn and you run it, you get an insane amount of money. I had a game where I ran it and I expected like 2,000 gold and I ended up getting like 4,000 souls plus for just depositing the Urn, which took me like exactly 10 seconds because I had massive sprint speed. Characters like Viscous, Holiday, Celeste, that have insane movement can run this incredibly fast. The world record right now, I think, for Viscous stands at like 10 seconds if you have Majestic Leap. So it is an objective that is available to everyone and is not necessarily priority for like a support. Because there's always stuff going on the map, you need to make your choices. If you are a great team fighter and you have a big teamfight ult and the rift is about to spawn, but at the same time the urn is on the other side of the map, it is probably better for you to join the rift fight, to have these high impact ults and still guarantee the rift fight win. Due to the RNG of this entire thing, due to the rift randomly spawning left to right, you can't predict it. It can happen that the urn drop-off spot is right at the rift fight, so you come in with the urn and then join the rift fight, or vice versa, where you help in the rift fight, you fight the rift, you use everything you have, all your cooldowns, and then you pick up the urn and run away, right? You got your value in the rift fight, and then you run across the map, and you still get more value by depositing the urn. The options really on this are limitless, and in the future, people will talk hours on like the best thing to do, but it really does feel way more like a MOBA now than it used to be. And when you pick up the urn, remember, you can use whatever you like during the run. You get increased sprint speed, so you can just hold the urn, bait the enemy team with it, or even attack a walker with it. There's really no downside to it because you can just do whatever you like with it, and it's just a thing on your back that you have in control. What you shouldn't do is like walk right up to the drop-off point and then give it to the enemy, obviously. Let's say you are a carry and you run the urn and you see the enemy is at the drop-off spot. You can just hold this. There is no penalty to it. It will eventually disappear. After 45 seconds on your back, the value of the urn goes down. The value of the urn goes down over time. So after 45 seconds on your back, it will disappear. But then there's, again, no downside to it. You denied it from the enemy, and the enemy probably like had all the attention on the map. They see the blinking urn icon and they want to like, you know, they want to contest the deposit. And as soon as you see an opening, you can deposit, which means, again, if the urn is on your side and it's there is no downside to picking it up ever, basically. Since the patch, I see way too many people actually still fight over the urn like it's a super valuable objective. What you have to understand is, if you take a team fight just to secure an urn, the urn is not worth enough to where you can justify losing a team fight after, right? So let's say you're in a situation where your team runs the urn and it's looking pretty bad, and your team gets the urn in, but then 3 people of your team die for it. That will now always be a net negative. Remember, it is way less money, and it's only really something you should do if there's nothing else to do. It is great on characters that want to farm, like if you want to get ahead in money right now, but you're not super efficient at jungle farming. Ideally, if you also have high movement speed, like again, a Viscous or a Holiday, you just run the urn whenever you can, whenever it's up. But I would not go out of my way to try to stop the urn from being deposited with your entire team. Okay, that is the #1 mistake I see people make. If you see the urn is picked up and you have control over the drop-off spot, right? So let's say the enemy team picked up the urn and you have control over the drop-off spot lane. Of course, you want to be there and like try to intercept, get a quick melee in and deposit the urn yourself. It's an instant deposit like the old urn used to work, right? So you can still do that if you're there, but going out of your way, if you're on another lane to stop the urn, if it's not on your way, if it's not efficient, is not a good play, okay? On the same page, it's not a good play if you're on the left lane and the urn spawns on right lane to go all the way back to base and then go all the way to the other lane just to pick up the urn. Again, think of it as like a bit of extra money for one person that becomes more and more important the more behind you are. Once the urn is deposited, it now spawns the souls again, and all the money that you get from it will be in those souls. So make sure if you deposit the urn to secure all your souls, or if you're on the other team and the enemy is depositing the urn, you can still deny and get basically all the money if the enemy is not paying attention, right? That means, by the way, that the urn is the lesser objective and should be thought of as the lesser objective. Unless there's a really good reason, like you can guarantee a free urn in, joining the rift fight or split pushing is probably more important. That also means you can use this to your advantage and bait the enemy team. You could also just pick up the urn and run it around a bit in circles, and a lot of the time the enemy team will just follow you or like really do what I just described, make the big mistake of like sitting on the drop-off spot waiting for it, and you on the meanwhile just sit with your team, you know, let your team like do some last sitting and you soak some money, and you're getting ahead that way by just holding the urn and holding it hostage, right? So let's give you a short rundown on every objective and when you should run it to make it a bit simpler for you. Let's talk about the rift first. If you notice the rift is spawning on your side of the map and you're already on the side lane, it is probably a good idea to immediately start pushing that lane and start pushing out the creep wave towards the enemy side, so you get an early head start in map control. If you know the rift is spawning on your side of the map, you make sure you gain map control early by pushing out waves and harassing the enemy out of lane. That doesn't mean you should run into their walker and like walker dive them, but if you have the map control on that side, it's going to be way harder for the enemy to get to the rift in time. And even if it ends up being an even team fight, because you have the ground advantage and you have more map control, it will be easier for you. That is tip number 1. On the other hand, if you are either a carry, a single target pick-off character that can do a lot in 1v1s, or you're really farmed, and you are also on the other side of the map and the rift fight, you know you're not going to get there in a reasonable manner. Split pushing or putting pressure otherwise on the map is also incredibly strong, because again, split pushing is actually better, because you will notice once you play more games that people will be more spread out, right? Like someone is going to run the urn, someone is going to jungle, and someone is going to be on the rift. So it creates way more openings for everyone on the map to play more aggressive. Playing more into the other objectives and taking map space is incredibly essential in this patch. Another thing to note, after the rift resolves and let's say you win the rift, it now spawns a bunch of mega creeps for your team. It's gonna spawn more creeps the more behind you are. So if you win an urn fight that you're behind in, it will spawn up to 12. On base it is 5, and this is what they look like. These creeps are incredibly strong to push with, especially if you're on Rem. And I'll just show this off real quick. This is one of the most broken strategies you have in the game right now, and we'll just let this play while I keep on yapping about this. These creeps do not die, they have infinite HP, and they will be able to push the wave that you just won, the rift fight, in incredibly fast. So after you win a rift fight decisively, and you are up, immediately start pushing that lane and at least try to get the walker, because as you can see, I don't even have to do anything. These creeps are doing the job for me, and they're really that insanely strong. I had a team fight today where we were behind a massive amount and we won one rift fight, and the rift fight brought us from like a 10k deficit to a 10k lead. It's the wildest gold swing I've ever seen. And it was not only because we got the comeback rift and we got the comeback rift souls, it's because after we were able to push incredibly fast for free because we have those creeps, okay? So keep in mind, you have the option to use those creeps to then finish a walker, or sometimes even push the enemy base with them and really like actually get to shrines. And you can see these things actually don't die. Again, they're gonna be weaker without Rem. If you have a Rem on your team, that's an absolutely crazy strategy. Which brings me to the main mechanic that got changed that is now really important, which is the comeback resistances, okay? So the Rift still grants you comeback resistance, up to 35%. It used to be if you're behind more than 10%, you would get 35% spirit resist, 35% bullet resist, and 35% debuff resist. And if you were any less than 10% behind, you would get nothing, right? So that is now gradual, and it's a linear scale, okay? So it still scales from 0%, so even net worth, nothing happens, up to 15% behind, okay? So if you're 15% behind, you get the maximum 35% resist. Which means if you are behind, especially if you're further behind, if you're like 15% or more net worth behind, you should still try to get into the rift fight even if you're the team behind, because that's going to be your best fighting ground against the enemy team, unless the enemy team is in your base. But that also means that if you're only a bit behind or you're even, you have to respect that, and it's going to be an even playing field where you don't get any resists. It is important to note that because there's more stuff on the map, it is also easier right now to come back. If you are currently in a state in the game where you don't feel very strong because you have ults on cooldown, or because you're just not farmed enough yet for your character to shine, or you're falling behind in money, it is also a super viable play to go for jungle instead. Ideally, you still want to steal the enemy farm first and farm efficiently and always push out waves first. But again, jungle feels better, and I had multiple games where I was behind quite a lot and I spent some time jungling. and kind of not going for the main objectives, and I got back into the game that way. Okay, so jungle, do not underestimate just being efficient in farming. Short little note here, if you want to learn how to jungle as efficiently as possible, check out my farming guide that I'll link below. Otherwise, Midboss still really functions the same way. After you win a big team fight or you get multiple pickoffs, you can run Midboss. And I would still recommend, if you have the choice between Midboss or securing a Rift, if you can secure the Midboss for free, Rejuvenator is still the best buff in the game and should still be prioritized. So you should still, if you are up in the mid game and the enemy has like 2-3 dead, don't worry too much about the Rift. Secure Midboss, let the enemy have the Rift in most cases, and you will still get ahead after because you have the Midboss and the Rejuvenator buffs. I really want to drive one point home, that like the overarching thing about this patch. Being proactive now is better than ever, okay? Creating map space and opening up the map, having the lanes push into the enemy side will not only keep them on their side, it will also allow you to get more urns and more rifts in, and it's more objectives, so more money for you, okay? So pushing out lanes became more important than ever in this patch. But do not underestimate jungle now. Do not underestimate the power of comeback gold in the jungle. And if you are a carry and you feel like you're weak and you still need to like get some money, there's nothing wrong letting your team know, hey guys, I won't be able to join this fight on the Rift. I'm not very strong. I will go split push and farm instead, okay? And that's the other ways you can get ahead. Another point really is that you really don't want to force random fights without objectives, because there's now always something going on. Either the urn is up, or the Rift is up, or both, or you can split push a walker. Just randomly running into the enemy jungle to fight them is not the play at all. You want to play for one of the objectives. There is enough to do now on the map that allows you to do that. And stealing enemy jungle is great, right? Because jungle is worth a lot. But you shouldn't force random fights, and if the enemy tries to contest you on their side, let's say you walk into the enemy jungle and you try to steal their sinners and the enemy shows up with multiple, it's fine to back out. You can create openings by being aggressive while not over-forcing teamfights, okay? The main thing I notice is, because the spawn time of the Rift is so random and not easy to read for the average player, even up to Eternus, you just having the knowledge of when the Rift spawns and creating that opening on the map early is going to be your #1 priority and your #1 way you can get ahead and win fights for your team. Just knowing and letting your team know, even if you're the carry, you can be on the other side of the map. You can be like, guys, the Rift is about to spawn. Make sure to push out that wave. That alone will just make your life so much easier. Yeah, in most of the Rift fights I've fought today, there haven't been really that many 66s. Just because there's other stuff going on. Try to be smart about what you can do on the map. Try to figure out, can I kill this walker in time while the Rift fight is still going on? And just be very mindful of the map. Looking at the map now, other than your screen, is more important than ever. And that's really the thing you can improve on. And the fastest you will learn is testing limits, making choices that will allow you to get ahead on the map. And you know, it might backfire, you might try new things and they might hurt you. But the worst thing you can do right now is play passive and play scared, because you will not learn the new meta faster than the average player and you will fall behind. And I hope that was somewhat helpful. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. And until next time, see you friends. Bye bye.